What's the explanation? Why now?
Well, you know, this is really about 14,000 files that were allegedly surreptitiously downloaded by Anthony Levandowski from Waymo. Judge William Alsup said that Levandowski had to turn over those files. Uber told its employee Levandowski it had to turn over those files, and he refused to comply, or he declined to comply, perhaps because something about them was incriminating. So, you know, it's interesting. It turns what has really been a two-party case into almost a three-party case right now. We now have Waymo versus Uber, and Anthony Levandowski now off on his own. So,
Mark, how does this actually impact the case? Does this hurt Uber's case? Does this help Waymo's case?
It's really hard to see right now. I think they're waiting for whether or not this will meet the criteria the judge has set up for the injunction, right? The judge could come out and say, okay, Uber, you've fired Levandowski. We don't have any evidence. He said previously that Waymo's case was pretty strong, but he said there was no quote-unquote smoking gun. So it seems like, you know, Uber's lawyers probably know what they're doing. So this might be a good outcome for them, but right now it's really unclear.
And is there any chance that Levandowski could be personally prosecuted here?
I do think that there is a criminal case proceeding. He also has a prior case that Waymo has filed against him. Prior to their February lawsuit against Uber, he's hired his own lawyers. After that lawsuit, they're criminal defense lawyers. So that's a likelihood as well.
Now, Brad, Levandowski argues that he's been forced to choose between his job and his constitutional rights. Does he have an argument there?
Well, I guess, you know, it's unclear. I'm not a legal expert, but you know, perhaps.
So Uber's driverless car future, what does this mean? They've already taken him off as the head of the unit. Do they really need him? Do they really need?
Well, he did become so identified with Uber and with its driverless car efforts, but there is a deep bench of talent there. You have Eric Mayhofer, who has now replaced him as the head of the driverless car division. He came from Carnegie Mellon. They have hired other folks, Raquel Uritzum, I believe, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that, from the University of Toronto, has started an AI lab in Toronto for Uber. You know, the risk is that the optics of this look so bad that it's going to be increasingly difficult for Uber to hire folks, and of course, talent is the name of this game right now.
So, Mark, on that note, there's a public trial on track for October. What's next here?
I do think, to Brad's point, you know, the self-driving cars are not necessarily on the road tomorrow, right? This is still, a lot experts say they're years, if not decades away. So there's a chance that Uber might turn into more of a partnership model. We see it partner with a few car makers. They might try to reach out to more car makers. It's something that Lyft has done, and of course, Lyft is also in talks with Waymo on a partnership there. So I think for this case, you know, we'll see a lot of movement. Uber later this week. They also have the massive investigation into their harassment issues. So maybe this is a way for them to kind of put this in the back burner and deal with a lot of other cultural issues facing the company.
Yeah, and let me just add one thing. I mean, there is always the possibility that these companies settle, right? I mean, Google is an investor in Uber. There are reasons for them to work together. It does appear from a distance that this case has really been about, you know, the founders of Alphabet, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, with a personal vendetta against one of their former employees, Anthony Levandowski. So now that he has gotten some separation from Uber, perhaps it's the beginning of Uber and Google, you know, coming back onto the side of being allies versus adversaries.
Interesting. Now, Uber CEO Travis Kalanick got some very sad news over the weekend. His mother, Bonnie Kalanick, was killed in a horrific boating accident. His father is in serious condition, so our hearts go out to Travis at this time. I do want to ask, though, Brad, you know, what is this? Uber has a lot of challenges on its plate right now. The sexual harassment investigation, the results of that are coming this week or next week. Are we expecting any delays?
You know, as far as I know, no. Eric Holder, the former Attorney General, was due to deliver his report to the Uber Board of Directors. It wasn't expected that report, or at least a redacted version of it, would become public until next week. So obviously it's a terrible time for the Kalanick family and for Uber itself. I don't know how much it'll slow down the investigation, though.
Do we know anything yet about which way the investigation is leaning?
No, we know very little. Other than that, he talked to many hundreds of employees. He delayed the report at one time, asking for more time because of the response that he had gotten. You know, I expect it's going to be tough for Uber.
And in general, in our estimation, how have all of these issues piling up impacted the Uber brand?
You know, in the tech community, perhaps in the investment community here in San Francisco, very much so. But you step outside the bubble, you go to another city, you go to another country, and Uber is an increasing part of people's lives. Not just Uber, of course, other ride-sharing companies too. So it's this weird paradox where, yes, the brand has been hurt, hiring has probably gotten more challenging. Inside Uber, it's got to be a very difficult time, but this is a service and a company that people love and have made a bigger part of their lives.